calling me out on predestination. You know, you should at least throw me a bone here. But anyway, and what I'm getting at is, so I'm a Christian, I'm a Reformed Christian that has certain implications that some of the theologians in the crowd understand better than I do, probably. And I'm a biologist. I think a lot about this stuff, and I hope you're not insulted when I say I'm pretty sure I know a whole lot more about molecular and cellular biology than you do. But my point is, I've read the book, I think about this stuff a lot, and I've reached a really different conclusion than you have. And I was wondering, why do you think that is? Well, let me offer some possibilities.
The implication of your question is that I, as a lowly philosopher of science, rather than a biologist, should have convinced you as a biologist, since you know so much more biology than I do, and since I haven't, it must be a deficiency in the evidence. And I don't think that is the reason.
You don't think that's the reason I asked? I hope not.
I'm picking up the clear implication of your question. If I'm misrepresenting it, then I'm sorry. But I think what the question is baited to get me to say, well, it's to imply that it's an evidential deficiency in the book. I don't think that's the case. What I've noticed in some of the critiques that you've made of the book online is that you are, as Art said, you're raising some interesting technical points, but you've been basically nibbling around the edges. The central issue of information and the origin of information is not something you've addressed in your critiques. And so I'd challenge you to think more carefully about the logic of the case that I'm making there. I commend you, A, for reading the book. Most of my critics haven't.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
I commend you.
I've noticed that.
I commend you also for eschewing these kind of dead-end debates about definition of science, and what was the other one you said at the beginning? I appreciate right away.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, people are different. I once, since we're both Christians, I'll share some in-house stuff. But I once sat at a meeting of young Earth creationists, old Earth creationists, and theistic evolutionists, and someone was trying to get them all together so that they would all, come to an agreement.
This can be done, actually.
Yeah.
This can be done.
And what I ended up talking about was the complexity of weighing evidence. And I used this inference to the best explanation model to try to create a framework of mutual understanding among these different parties. And actually, by the end of the week, I realized this wasn't an intellectual issue. It was bad relationship skills, basically. But
so let me tell you why
I'm always reluctant
to
comment on motives, but I do think. We should just keep talking. I've appreciated the fact that you've taken the.
I heard a key phrase: people are different, and this is what I want to address in my question. It is not that the fact that I don't buy the argument means the argument is wrong. I'm not that arrogant. Come on, people. It is that it's that old, tired cliche. Sometimes reasonable people can disagree, and so I don't find the argument convincing. I really don't, but I think I know why. And the reason why is, and I just figured out tonight, that you said that we will reason backwards from what we know works, which is that intelligence makes codes. All agreed. Can I see the hands of people who don't agree? Of course not. Okay, and we'll reason back and say, therefore, this is the one explanation we know that can do this. I buy that. I get it. It's obvious. But I see the world differently than you do.
So, what's the problem?
Here's the thing. I haven't yet, well, you say, intelligence always creates information. And my view is a little different. It's everywhere I look and every time I look, if I just wait long enough, there is a natural and sometimes even materialistic explanation for things. Now, don't I have the right to say, I'm going to go ahead and extrapolate that back, like Steve's doing, not because I'm an obnoxious Calvinist, maybe that's true, but because, that's just kind of my preference. And so what I want all of us to agree on is that it's fruitless, pointless to say, Steve, don't be stupid. Design doesn't explain what you want it to. Well, of course it does. How could it not? But wouldn't it be reasonable for some of the Christians in this room to say,
you're comfortable waiting for another explanation?
I am.
which in a strict sense concedes that the one I've offered is currently best, but...
Should I stand up and take a bow? All right. It's because I'm a Suns fan. I know that's the reason.
That wasn't meant to be a gotcha line. It really wasn't. And that we have a different philosophy of science, which is where the locus of our disagreement probably lies, and where we should continue to converse. I agree. And
absolutely.
I commend you for coming. I appreciate it. And you caught some nice things of a niggly nature in some of your blog posts that came just in time for me to correct them for the paperback edition.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll look for the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
So just the final comment, though, on that line of thinking is design will always be an excellent and irrefutable explanation. How could it? I just don't see how it couldn't be. Art is saying, well, it doesn't look design to me. He's right, and there's some stuff that goes on in cell. I don't know how you get design out of that. But it's easy. You simply say, well, in fact, you do say this, let's wait. Maybe we're going to see there's a really good reason for why a cell builds proteins billions a day and puts them straight into the wood chipper. Maybe there's a good reason for that. You said that. There's nothing wrong with talking like that. There's also nothing wrong with saying, wow, man, I don't know. So that's all.
You know, one other thing I'd just say about the inductive argument that you offer from our experience of materialistic explanations always panning out. Since Michael Shermer has sent a question remotely, I'll tell a story about one of our debates. We're writing back from college somewhere near St. Louis, the one where Churchill and Westminster College out in some... Yeah, in Fulton, Missouri, where he gave the Iron Curtain speech. And we had it was a really good exchange, as usual. And I asked Michael, why are you, he has this deconversion experience a story that he always tells about how he was a Christian and became a materialist. And I said, well, what convinced you that, a theistic worldview was untenable? And he said, well, it was because science had just explained so many things. And I said, he said, like just the structure of DNA. I said, yeah, but what about the origin of the information in DNA? And he, said, well, okay, I don't want to fight you on that too much. And I said, well, what about the fine-tuning of the laws of physics and chemistry? And he says, well, there's the multiverse. And then I looked at him, this is after the debate when you're being candid. And he says, okay, that's kind of lame. And then I said, and what about the origin of the universe at the very beginning of time, where talking has, solved the field equations of general relativity, and the curvature of space-time goes to a 0 point such that space is infinitely tight. How much matter can you put in zero spatial volume? Not much is the answer. That's not a promising avenue for a materialistic explanation. And then what about consciousness? And Michael saying, well, yeah, okay, those questions, I agree, those are things. Well, those are pretty fundamental questions. In other words, materialism has explained everything but the really interesting stuff. So,
I am a materialist on consciousness, by the way, but yeah.
So, well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. So, I think it's perfectly legitimate to begin to bring to bear on our understanding of the natural world what we know from our introspective experience of another reality, which is there are minds. And I think the materialistic worldview and the materialistic approach to science writes out of our reality that very fundamental aspect of it. And I think that's been there's been a great, I love science, and I think there's been a lot of progress made in analyzing things in terms of material cause and effect. But there are other aspects of reality that we know from experience, and if we turn a blind eye to them, we may miss some things that are very important, especially about these fundamental questions of origins.